Here comes another Buzzcards review for the Melbourne Fringe Festival. Buzzcards is a review program which is presented by Express Media in association with Melbourne Fringe, Beat Magazine, MIT, and Sing. The light-hearted section is mixing up songs, physical gags, no-fi props, and video projections. Neostate's performing is engaging and well-timed. It's structured by a series of quotes and lyrics by various musicians, displayed in lo-fi style on giant sheets of cardboard. As Neostate traverses an impressive thematic terrain, some of his topics are familiar, including ridiculous song lyrics and silly dance moves, typically point out the singers like Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, John Weston Leonard, and Lady Gaga. Elle's Music Rant is on at the Glass House Hotel between September and October as a part of the Melbourne Fringe Festival. More information on ticket and timeline, head to melbournefringe.com.au. This has been Nico Chen for Buzzcards.
We heard from the department, or the department has flagged the intention to introduce a new change on 1st of July 2012. That's called Skills Select. Probably some students already heard of that. And the Skills Select, they changed the mechanism of applying for permanent residence. From if it's introduced, everyone will have to first register their interest on a Skills Select website, and the website will rank their points or their places in the whole system. And then the website will generate invitation to students who seemed meet the requirements. And without an invitation, no one can apply for the permanent residence. So it becomes an application by invitation mechanism.
Definitely, I think it's going to stop a lot of people. It's going to put a lot of people off. I don't know too much about the Skills Select process, too much in detail, but I think it's one of the biggest moves that the Australian immigration has pulled off within recent years. And I think that from now on, definitely from next year onwards, it will be a lot more difficult for international students to migrate in, for sure. And I think that it's something that the Australian government has always planned to do. I think I've always seen it coming, but next year it looks like that they're going to implement it for real. I think if anything else, they've made it harder for us by putting the skill selecting in place for next year.
The current skilled occupation list has only about slightly more than 100 occupations, and basically it was selected by the Skills Australia, and it's updated. The Skills Australia is the organisation updating it from time to time based on the labour market information. So currently they're focused on very specialised occupations like engineer, computer professionals, accountants, doctors, nurses. So students studying general degree like HR or management, marketing, they don't find their occupation on the list.
You experienced the disaster earthquake, so what did you feel at that time?
Yeah, the earthquake happened before the tsunami, and after the tsunami there's a lot of earthquake, so I experienced the earthquake. It is just so huge. It's like the biggest earthquake I've experienced in my life, but I'm still lucky that the tsunami didn't go to my town.
Was there any warning that you saw or heard when the earthquake came?
There's no warning for the earthquake, but there was a warning for the tsunami, especially in TV or radio. There's a warning from the government that say that in a few hours, the tsunami will come and hit north of the Sumatra Island. The warning is just not intense. It is say there will be an earthquake, tsunami, but they didn't say that the tsunami is so huge, so nobody take it seriously. Everybody just still sleeping and think that it's just like another earthquake, because we always experience earthquake in Indonesia.
What did you do when you realized that there was a huge and terrible earthquake?
Of course, everybody was shocked, and everybody go out from home. We all gather in a safe place, like in the hospital or in the center of the city. We gather together and there's no communication like to and from another people in different area. We cannot like phone or TV, all the electricity was stopped.
How's your friends who experienced the tsunami at that time?
I have some friends in Aceh. At that time, I couldn't contact them. Like I said before, the phone was not working. And I saw in the TV that the tsunami was huge and terrible. And so many people died. I was so worried. How was my friends there? And I can contact them like 1 or 2 weeks after. I have like 2 or 3 friends there. They told me later that they are so freaking out. I have like 2 or 3 friends there. They are all safe, but not their family. Some of the families missing. Finally, it is known that they are died.
So maybe a couple of years later, right? It's 2011. When you came back to Indonesia, so what's the situation after rebuilding?
Actually, the rebuilding is not that good. What I mean is the money that the government gets from another country like Australia, Japan, or USA, the money is corrupted by the government. It's so bad. The rebuilding is happening until now. It's already like 7 years, but it's still happening. It's cannot go back to before the tsunami happened. Like so many houses are still down, school down, the hospital. It's just unfair for the citizens.
What does the government actually do to encourage her people to be out of the sadness losing family?
The government is located in Jakarta. The president at that time, he talked in TV and it was broadcast to the whole of Indonesia. We can see in TV that she talks about she feels so sorry that the tsunami happened, so many people died, so many army went to Aceh to help the people there to rebuild the building and school. We also get some donation from, like I've mentioned before, Australia, Japan, USA. We get some from there, but I don't think that the government has done what they actually have to do, which is encourage the citizen or it's just they talk a lot but not really much action from the government.
So it seems that the improvement after the disaster is not quite obvious.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
You didn't experience the tsunami, but you experienced the earthquake. So how's your family going?
My family is quite lucky. Our house is still alright, but my friends is not as lucky as me. They have to move from Sumatra, which is Aceh, the center of the tsunami. They have to move to Java Island. They are quite lucky they have the money to move. But for other people there who don't have money to move or to rebuild their house, they have to stay there. They have to wait for the government helps.
You must hear that here is another tsunami which happened in Japan in March 11.
Yeah, I heard about the Japan tsunami. But actually what I think is 20,000 people died. But comparing to Indonesian tsunami, 200,000 people died. So it's like 10 times in Indonesia. I feel so sorry about the tsunami in Japan. And when I saw in TV, it's like bring my memory back to when the tsunami happened. I was so sad.
I know that many countries have found ways to eradicate polio. I'm just wondering, right now, where is the problem? What countries is it mainly affecting?
There's 14 countries that have reported polio so far this year, but the real key ones, Rose, are India, Pakistan, Afghanistan and Nigeria, because they're the 4 that have never, ever stopped their own local transmission of polio. And India and Nigeria in particular are 2 that frequently sort of export polio viruses to other places and cause outbreaks in other countries that have been polio-free up till that time.
So why do you think that polio can be the next virus to be eradicated as opposed to other diseases or viruses that, are affecting third world or other countries?
It's got a number of features that make it sort of amenable to eradication. One of them is that it only exists in humans. There's no animal reservoir and it doesn't live in the environment for any length of time. It's got to survive in people. So if you can wipe it out in people, then it's gone. It goes the way of the dinosaur. And plus we have a vaccine that's pretty effective in creating immunity. So these are all the reasons why in the 80s there was this build-up towards a resolution or a global program to eradicate. And it's not doing too badly. I mean, it's I think been reinforced as it's gone along. Once immunisation became more popular and more people got immunised, the numbers of cases began to drop pretty fast. And before the eradication initiative started in the mid-80s and whatever, there used to be about 500,000 cases of polio a year in the world, and last year there were about 1,300, and this year so far there's been about 270. So it's getting pretty close to the end, we hope.
Just out of interest, I suppose, what actually happens to children that are affected by polio?
It's variable, Rose, because quite often anyone who's infected may not show any symptoms at all, and it's only a minority of people who get infected that actually get sick. Or seriously sick. I mean, you might get a little bit sick and not even really notice it. But the kids or the adults, if they're not immune, who do get sick, it starts off about between 10 days and 2 weeks after they got infected usually, and they start off having a fever, and then quite quickly they have what's called flaccid paralysis. So they find that they can't move one or more of their limbs, and then that's it. So you can have a situation where the paralysis sort of becomes worse and paralyses the respiratory muscles, and the older ones of us will sort of remember these great big iron lungs that used to exist in hospitals where people who couldn't breathe anymore, the machine did the breathing for them. Nowadays in developing countries, about 10% of the kids who come down with clinical symptoms just go on and die, because there's really not that sort of care available to keep them alive. And most of the rest get permanently paralysed. They don't recover, they're paralysed for life.
The current mental health system is not resourced to deal with young people who have mild to moderate mental health issues. This often means that young people do not obtain timely treatment, or they may have difficulty finding an appropriate service that responds to their needs. We spoke to Professor Patrick McGorry, 2010 Australian of the Year, and leading researcher in the field of youth mental health.
Probably the way depression presents in younger people is a bit different. In older people, you often see very severe, persistent, stable forms of depression which are often life-threatening. And in young people, you see a much greater degree of instability of mood, which can be very deep and also life-threatening, but slightly in a different way. There's still major under-treatment of depression, and also the treatment that is provided isn't holistic, quite often. While antidepressants are a very important component in the treatment of particularly, severe forms of depression, what's often missing is a much more sort of sophisticated psychological treatment approach. Access to really skilled clinical psychologists or psychiatrists is still the minority of people with depression that get access to that level of sophistication. And you do need complex psychological skills, plus, some cases, medication, and also a look at the social environment of the person if you're really going to help someone with depression. Of course, depression is part of so many other forms of mental ill health. Depression complicates substance abuse and alcohol problems. It complicates psychoses like schizophrenia. It's the downside of bipolar disorder. It's common in eating disorders, and it's also very common in personality disorders. So depression is like a common thread that goes right across the whole spectrum of mental ill health. Young people are maturing, their brains and their personalities and their social world is maturing through adolescence, and they're not necessarily well equipped with a coping repertoire to handle all of the challenges that they're facing. This is the peak period in the lifespan for the onset, the first appearance of mental ill health, and it just doesn't happen overnight. It happens, kind of a evolving sort of way, and so at the beginning, it's hard to tell the difference between just the normal stresses and strains of being a young person in a stressful environment versus the onset of something that's a manifestation of poor mental health or a mental disorder emerging and appearing and maybe becoming entrenched. So what we have to do is create a space whereby we're able to allow people to seek support, information, and probably also have a bit of time out so that we see what actually is going to happen over a few weeks and see if things are going to resolve with sort of minimal support and just time, Or if things aren't clearing up, then they can head down the pathway of help seeking